I don't know about you, but I've always had issues trying to relic up my characters as needed. So many game modes these days need you to have relic characters. You're trying to go ahead and push well in the raid. You need R9 Queen Amidala, an R9 Master Qui-Gon Jinn, an R9 Padawan Obi-Wan, but you also want to try and get R8 on your Separatists and R7 on your Galactic Republic Jedi, and so on and so forth. That rat race never ends, ladies and gentlemen, and I've had many questions that's asking me how I should be farming my signal data. We had a video recently that went over how you should be farming relic levels in general, but this question kept popping up. What do I use to farm signal data? Is it crystal refreshes in Cantina, or is it through the weekly shipment stores, or is it even with Jawa scavenger bundles? They all have their validity and they all have their benefits, but let's talk about what is actually the most effective. When it comes to signal data, there are three main methods of trying to farm it, and you're going to need to do it a lot, so getting it right early is the best way of doing it. First way that you farm signal data is through Cantina battles, okay? There are 3 nodes for the 3 different types of signal data that you've got. The hardest one is flawed signal data. You need this from like Relic 4 to Relic 9, essentially. Then you've got your incomplete signal data over here. This is the mid-tier one. You'll need that going from like Relic 2, I believe. And then over here, right at the start, we've got the fragmented signal data. Those are your 3 different signal data types, okay? And you can use your Cantina energy up here to farm those different types. They all have different kinds of drop rates, but they all take the same energy. All of these nodes here are 16 energy nodes essentially, and their drop rates taper based on which node you're farming. So over here you've got the highest, most probable drop rate signal data over here. This one has got the highest drop rate. I think it's about 1.2. We'll get to that in a moment. And over here we've got incomplete. That's about 0.9 signal data per sim. And down here right at the end we've got the flawed signal data. That's about 0.66, 0.67 on average signal data per sim. Okay, so apart from Cantina Energy, what else have we got? We have got the weekly shipment. As you might guess, guys, the weekly shipment is a shipment store that refreshes weekly. Every single week this thing will refresh, and it always has some static items. There are some random items that get thrown in, but there are also static items. Those static items do include the different types of signal data. So you can see over here, you've got 100 signal data for 1500 crystals, 100 incomplete signal data for 2000 crystals, and 50 flawed signal data over here for 1500 crystals. So you look at that and you think about the other way and you're like, okay, so I could use 100 crystals every day. That's 300 crystals daily in order to get Cantina energy to farm my signal data so I can relic up, or I can just take that in a bulk and throw it out there. What's more effective? I don't know. And then finally, we do have the daily deals from the Jawa. These can sometimes have signal data, much like this one here does. 3,200 crystals for 110. Now, if you think about just basic maths, we went to the last page. 50 of this flawed signal data over here was 1,500 crystals, right? So 110 theoretically would be twice and then some, right? So 1,500 times 2 is already 3,000 crystals for about the same amount. So you can already see at a glance that this is probably just a little bit better than going to the weekly shipments straight away, right? So the main question turns into, is it more cost effective to buy from weekly shipments, daily deals, which are random, you can't ever guarantee, you can mess around with the RNG a little bit to make it be more likely, or finally, is it just pure straight up refreshing? Fortunately for us, this game has been around for a long time, and most of the gaming community that we work with is incredibly nerdy. As a consequence, as soon as signal data came out, there was empirical research done in to try to establish what is the actual drop rate of each type of signal data so that we can understand what is the most cost-efficient way of farming them. That information is freely available. And I know people are going to say that the following information is obviously based on averages, and when you sim it, you're not actually guaranteed these drop rates. That's absolutely true. You could do a bunch of sims and get no signal data whatsoever. You'd just be very, very unlucky. However, that does not deny the value of this information. This information here has got a 95% level of confidence that these drop rates are correct, which means we are pretty certain that it's exactly these figures. If it's not, it's a little bit higher or it's a little bit less. There's very little margin for error here. You can see they've done roughly about 2,000 sims of both fragmented and incomplete, and about 1,500 sims of flawed signal data to try and ascertain exactly how much the drop rate is. We can see over here that fragmented has got a drop rate of about 1.37, incomplete has got a drop rate of about 0.93, and flawed has got a drop rate of about 0.66. Now we can use this average drop data, combine it with how many crystals it costs us to refresh our Cantina energy to find out what is the value, essentially, of 100 crystals for each signal data type. So let's do that. Let's start off with Cantina energy. For the first 3 refreshes of Cantina energy, it costs you 100 crystals per refresh, and you get 120 energy out of that. Each of the sims for the different types of signal data is 16 energy per sim, which works out at about 7.5 sims for 100 crystals. If we then take that 7.5 sims, we multiply it by the drop rate for each individual type of signal data, we will be able to find out how much signal data we should get for 100 crystals. That works out at about 10.3 signal data for the fragmented, 6.9 signal data for incomplete, and 4.9 for flawed. Comparing that to what we can actually buy then inside of the weekly shipments, you can get 100 of fragmented signal data for 1,500 crystals. So if every 100 crystals gives us 10.3 of this signal data, we just multiply that number by 15 to give us the 1,500 crystal expense, and we've got a comparable number. 10.3 signal data times 15 gives us 154.5 signal data for 1,500 crystals, which is roughly 54.5% more drops than what we would get if we spent the same amount of crystals by just using the weekly store. We can easily say then that using crystals to refresh your Cantina energy is more effective at farming signal data. It's not just true for the fragmented signal data either. Nope, it's actually true for the incomplete and the flawed as well. With incomplete signal data, in the shipments you pay 2,000 crystals for 100 incomplete signal data. If we're getting 6.9 signal data for every 100 crystals, we have to times that by 20 to get a figure of 139.5, which is obviously higher than the 100 you would get for the 2,000 crystals in shipments. So once again, incomplete signal data is more cost effective through farming on Cantina energy. And finally, we have flawed signal data. You can get 50 flawed signal data for 1,500 crystals, and 100 crystals in Cantina energy gets you 4.95 flawed signal data on average. We multiply that by 15 to get to the 1,500 crystal value, which works out at 74.25. Basically about a 50% increase. So it's true of every single type of signal data. You are more cost effective if you use your 100 crystal refreshes every day to farm this signal data. Anything extra on top of that, you're better off really going to the store, with the incomplete actually giving you the best value for your crystals there. So to wrap it up, guys, basically just use your crystals to refresh your Cantina energy, farm your signal data that way. Do not go beyond the 100 crystal refreshes for that energy if you're farming signal data, and just go with it. I know sometimes the drop rates feel like they're against you, but the data is there, guys. We have a 95% confidence level that these drop rates are correct. Sometimes it will benefit you, sometimes you will lose a bit. It's just math, guys. Alright. Please give a like if this video was useful to you, and subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you all in the very next video. Peace out, and may the Force be with you.